Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. The World Health Organization expert panel will be assessing the Bharat Biotech's COVID vaccine, COVAXIN, for emergency use approval. Now, the approval is expected this month after a meeting that took place. It is going to be taking place on Tuesday next week. The strategic advisory group of the expert panel on immunization is set to deliberate on the findings provided by the Bharat Biotech from their phase 3 of the clinical trials and put forward recommendations. So far, the WHO has only included 6 vaccine candidates under its emergency use approval list. Sinovac and Sinopac are amongst the 2 vaccines from China, while India's COVAXIN continues to be left hanging. Now, is the emergency use approval now imminent is the big question that we ask. And in fact, let's try to figure out all these developments that are taking place and what the World Health Organization has been doing in the last several weeks and months ever since the Bharat Biotech had gone ahead and appealed to the WHO to give it the emergency approval. And in fact, there are a number of these tweets and news reports that have also been flashed by the World Health Organization agency to allow for people to understand at what stage it is at in providing Bharat Biotech the EUL, emergency use for the vaccine COVAXIN. Now, this is the latest tweet by the World Health Organization. It says that COVAXIN manufacturer Bharat Biotech has been submitting data to the World Health Organization on a rolling basis as and when asked by the WHO and submitted additional info at the WHO's request as well on 27 September. The WHO experts are currently reviewing this information, and if it addresses all questions raised, the WHO assessment will be finalized next week. All right, so that's the latest information. There was hope that after the 27th September meeting that took place between Bharat Biotech and the WHO officials, there was a date, October 5th was when there was an emergency approval awaited, but that has not happened. There is going to be a meeting that is going to take place next week by the WHO officials. The Bharat Biotech officials are also going to be present. Remains to be seen if that much needed approval is going to be given by Bharat Biotech. But let's take a look at the other set of communications, public communications that have been made by the World Health Organization. Over here, another tweet that has been shared. WHO and an independent group of experts are scheduled to be meeting next week. They will be carrying out the risk and benefit assessment and come out to a final decision whether to grant the emergency use listing to COVAXIN. So that's the messaging that has been come from the WHO. It also speaks about the kind of assessments that are going to take place by the technical advisory group and the independent experts. They are going to be centered on determining if a manufactured product, example, the vaccine is quality assured, whether it is, I'll just go back to that screen, yes, quality assured, whether it is safe and effective. So those are the 3 parameters on which a vaccine or any product that goes for these parameters and guidelines for emergency approvals is tested on. An example, like this is the entire cycle of it for the vaccine to be approved, for the cold chain to take place and allowing for the kind of developments that take place over here. So we start off over here, we see the pre-qualification and emergency user listing is over here, but before that we actually take a look at how this entire cycle starts off, and then it is the only when the emergency use listing is provided. Before that, there is the development and clinical trials that take place over here. These clinical trials, after they are completed, are provided to the World Health Organization, which in turn gives the EUL, which is the emergency use listing, and then that particular organization, then that particular manufacturing unit, manufacturing plant, that company then allows for the manufacturing of the vaccine on a large scale. The cold storage of the vaccine takes place. Obviously, logistics are taken care of, delivery, and finally the vaccination campaigns begin. There are ongoing safety checks that take place, and the vaccine is administered, inoculated to people who are in need. At this point of time, obviously, the corona vaccine is what we are talking about. All right. If you take a look at the next set of communications, yes, so this is important. Why, you ask? Because of the fact that these are the parameters, this is the big parameter on which the World Health Organization is going to be providing the emergency use listing to Bharat Biotech's COVAXIN. This is from the website of the World Health Organization, and it provides you all these detailed answers to the most asked questions, most frequently asked questions. And over here, how soon can a vaccine against COVID-19 be assessed under the EUL? And under the highlighted, I've highlighted marked information over here, for an investigational vaccine to be considered fit for use in public health emergency, data should demonstrate that there is a benefit in the target population that outweighs the risk of its use. So the words of this statement are important. There is a benefit in the target population that outweighs the risk of its use. This is important because the next set of slides are going to showcase exactly how COVAXIN is for the benefit of the target population, and it definitely clearly outweighs the risk of its use. All right. We'll try to understand what does the emergency use listing by WHO mean. There are these prerequisites for COVAX. It assesses the quality, the safety and the efficacy of that particular vaccine. And in the case of AstraZeneca, and this would be an interesting figure to remember, interesting snippet or information to remember, in case of AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, WHO ended up assessing that the quality, safety and efficacy of the vaccine and the data, risk management plans and programmatic suitability such as cold chain requirements, the process took only 4 weeks. So within 4 weeks of those permissions that were sought by AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, the WHO had already given every single one of those emergency approvals. This would be interesting to note, and let's try to, okay, all right, to the next set of slides over here. Okay, so now this is in a presentation that had been given by Bharat Biotech. There was a final analysis of COVAXIN. This is the efficacy from phase 3 clinical trials, and as per the WHO testing and analysis, efficacy analysis demonstrates that COVAXIN is 77.8% effective against symptomatic COVID-19. It is 93.4% effective against severe symptomatic COVID-19. It is 63.6%, gives 63.6% protection against asymptomatic COVID-19 and 65.2% protection against the Delta variant of the coronavirus 19. All right, now there was yet another, in one of the slides of the presentations, these are the important factors that were noted in, and I'm going to just highlight them for my viewers over here. Risk management and implementation. The presentation of the clinical data on COVAXIN from phase 1, 2 and 3 and post-marketing studies on the safety, immunogenicity, efficacy and effectiveness. So these are obviously the parameters that have been mentioned. There have been risk management and other implementation considerations that have been taken care of by WHO and the independent agency that is testing the vaccine even now. All right, I'm going to move on to the next set of slides, and you know, as per the information that has been provided by the World Health Organization, we again witness over here that, and this is interesting to note, that the efficacy endpoint for COVID-19, Bharat Biotech's COVAXIN has been given a 77.8% efficacy. For severe COVID, there is 93.4% efficacy percentage, and for the Delta variant, it is 65.2%. So these are the figures. These are in public knowledge, public domain, and anybody can access them at this point of time. And let's take a look at the next set of slides. So in direct contrast to what happened with the CoronaVac vaccine, which is a Chinese vaccine, and that was also given approval, emergency approval, approval by the World Health Organization within just a few weeks of them seeking that particular approval. And take a look at these important issues that were highlighted. The antibody level of the CoronaVac actually declined to a low level 6 months, within 6 months of the second dose. So it has gone down. The efficacy on day 0 to actually day 50, between 40 and 50, and by the time the second dose is given, it again subsides within 6 months to 0 over here in 6 months after 2 doses. And then there has to be a booster dose that needs to be given that again brings the immunity levels high into a particular individual. Now this is the report for CoronaVac, which is a vaccine that has been approved by the World Health Organization. The antibody levels have also declined but remained relatively high level 6 months after the booster dose. So you understand that while there has been approvals, emergency approvals that have been given to a number of vaccines, 6 vaccines in total, including AstraZeneca, and I just showed you on this slide, the Sinovac and CoronaVac, the 2 vaccines which have been manufactured in China. And even though they showcase lower efficacy levels in terms of their performance in an individual's body, they have still been given these approvals within a very short span of time, within weeks' time. So why is it that Bharat Biotech has to wait endlessly? Remember, they had applied for these approvals back in June, May, June, and it is October at this point of time, and still no sight of those emergency approvals. So this is what we are discussing. Is this vaccine racism? Why, if at all it is, then why is it happening? Why are questions not being raised? And let's rope in my guests right now to answer all these questions for us on the broadcast. Joining me on the broadcast at this point of time, I like to rope in Dr. Bagai. And Dr. Bagai, this short presentation that I brought to notice to our viewers and the kind of public messaging that has been brought about by the World Health Organization, what do you think are actually the issues that perhaps the World Health Organization agency is facing when it comes to providing that emergency approval to COVAXIN?
Good evening everyone. So there are 6 quick points and each one is extremely critical. One is that India overall has been a vaccine manufacturing pioneer and hub. More than 60% of the global stockpile of the vaccines used, mainly for children though, have been actually manufactured and exported from India. Bharat Biotech is not a new kid on the block. They've been in business for the last 2 decades plus. They have more than 7 or 8 very large platforms which have been widely used, including in our own personal practice, and we've had no problems at all with regards to their vaccines. They have finished the phase 3 trial, which was actually submitted in the month of June.
Yeah.
And like you have mentioned, it had done a participant trial of 23,500 going up to 28,000, and even showing an overall vaccine efficacy of 77.8%, symptomatic and asymptomatic 93 to 63%, and even against the Delta strain had shown an extremely good response of protection up to 65%, which is excellent. Now come to what has undergone to reach this data in the trial. They've passed through the safety profiling, immunogenicity, vaccine efficacy, profiling, age-wise, symptomatic versus asymptomatic, and different age groups. Now, what's the proof of the pudding? The proof of the pudding is vaccine effectiveness on the ground.
Right.
India today has finished 93 crores. I think 15 or 20% of the total doses have been actually from the Bharat Biotech, which is COVAXIN. Yes, Serum Institute vaccine, AstraZeneca has been more. But having said that, we still have a profiling of more than about 15 or 20 crore vaccines which have been given of COVAXIN. There has been no significant side effects vis-a-vis other vaccines, including the mRNA vaccines. No significant myocarditis or thromboembolic phenomena or anaphylaxis. The breakthrough infections have been less than 0.2%, which is matching the global data. Now come to what is happening with regards to other vaccines.
Yeah.
The other vaccines, vis-a-vis, like you mentioned, the vaccines from China, have shown a vaccine effectiveness to begin with, vaccine efficacy to begin with nearing about 50-55%. And most Southeast Asian countries which actually got that, the vaccine efficacy, effectiveness on the ground was nearing 30%. In fact, the stocks had to be bought back and the new platforms were actually being used because people were dying and still getting rampant infection in spite of being fully vaccinated. So I think there is an element of three elements, in fact. One is, I think, a bureaucratic round and round, wheel within wheel. Point number two, there is a cognitive bias. There's no question about it. And three, I would like to highlight that the issue of WHO giving an approval, I think that is passé. India has produced more vaccines than the world has ever seen. My question is, why do we actually need an approval of WHO, which has sat on it from June, July onwards up to now October, whereas other vaccines with poorer efficacy, poorer effectiveness have got the approvals really quick.
Okay.
I would like to mention a last very quick point. In emergency use, I think we have to look at global safety. When the Ebola epidemic took place, they actually approved the Ebola vaccine with just 90 odd participants in a trial, and the vaccine was approved for emergency use. Here we have crores of patients and millions of patients. I don't know what is preventing WHO from giving the approval. This is only going to delay hurdle. We can actually be producing much more once the approval is given and export it to countries which are less fortunate than India, who much need this vaccine.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. You make very important, pertinent points over here. Dr. Professor M.C. Mishra also on the broadcast with me. And there was an important parameter and perhaps the underlying parameter for giving that emergency approval to manufacturers manufacturing COVID vaccines. That was the vaccine's efficacy must outweigh its risk on the target audience, target population. And if we take a look at and compare the 6 vaccines that have been given the WHO approval, COVAXIN gets it right in every single one of those parameters and perhaps even outdoes the rest of the vaccines. So the question Dr. Bagai has picked is, why is it that the WHO is continuing to delay this? Is this the big pharma politics that is playing it out and disallowing indigenous manufacturers like Bharat Biotech to sell off their vaccines, and not just sell off their vaccines, but also provide their vaccines for the larger good of the community world over?
I think we have to understand from various perspectives. There is some smell of politics behind all this, but I think let's not be emotional about it. Let's be realistic about it, that COVAXIN was behind Covishield and Chinese vaccines in terms of trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trial and the data. So whosoever had completed that sooner submitted the data and that was approved. However, if you look at COVAXIN trajectory of development, their phase 2 trial was ongoing in October last year, October, November, and phase 3 trial began in November. And then there was a sudden dip of patients of COVID in January and February, December, January, February. So because I participated in COVAXIN trial, and they found it very difficult to recruit patients in the trial because of the low infections. So they actually could not complete the phase 3 trial by February. And that was, if you remember, there were a lot of criticism by our own people in January, February, why the DCGI had given emergency use authorization when the trial was not complete. And there was a lot of debate in media, and you see politicians came on television and said, we will not take BJP vaccine, etc., etc. And that was all politics going on there. And then naturally the infections started rising, and they must have completed phase 3 trial. They submitted the data, but somewhere because WHO's committee which examines this data must be satisfied. Let's not fool ourselves that we have been manufacturing 2/3 of the world requirement, etc., etc. That will not be considered, or we may have given to 10 crore people or 15 crore people. That also is immaterial, because when you are asking for a global recognition, either you say we don't care for WHO, we are giving in ourselves, we are giving to our people and they are benefiting. That's it.
I mean, whether we care about WHO or not, the situation at this point in time is that you require the WHO stamp for the vaccine to be given emergency approvals and be sent across to other parts of the world.
Let me complete. So either we say we don't care for WHO, our vaccine is good, and which is it good. I appreciate it's better than Covishield. I can tell you that. It has lesser side effects. I know from my personal information, the people who got Covishield and what kind of side effects they had. It is a better vaccine, more realistic vaccine.
Okay.
Efficacy, safety is equal. There is no question of safety. There is no question of efficacy. So I think and there is a lot of commercial interest. There are a lot of big pharma, what you said, that also is behind the scenes, Chinese pressure on the WHO chief and all that.
So all those parameters are there. It's not a figment of our imagination. It is obviously this lobbying takes place, this politics takes place, there's pressure that has been put. I'll have to cut you short. Sorry, Dr. Mishra, I only have about 6 minutes. I'd like to rope in Dr. Ravi Malik at this point of time. And Dr. Malik, in that presentation that I did, there was a contrast and a very, very stark one at that, where the CoronaVac that has been given an approval by the WHO showcased that by this time there was a second dose that was given. I think within 2 months' time, the efficacy of the vaccine dropped drastically to 0, versus the kind of tests that are being done and trials that are being done on COVAXIN, and it does not show any of such drops. So in such a scenario, should we questioning the World Health Organization, and who is the authority that is going to be regulating the World Health Organization to tell them to do the right thing?
Look, lot many points are bubbling in my mind. First point is whether we are dependent upon the WHO nod or not. We don't in fact need WHO nod, and there is definitely a smell of little partialism which is coming up, as you have shown in your slides also, because we applied, Bharat Biotech applied in the month of June and July, and it is now October running, and still now we are waiting for their nod. So I'm not going in the political aspect of it, but I must tell you one thing, that on ground, this vaccine has proved to be absolutely efficacious.
Right.
It has proved to be, we have given more than 10 crore of vaccines, and it has been proved to be having practically minimal or no side effects. And since it is a purely indigenous vaccine, which is purely homegrown, developed by ICMR and the National Institute of Virology, so we are probably looking out for, from the export point of view, of course, we need a WHO nod, and probably we are looking out for a branding from a WHO. But as far as the speed and spread of vaccination is concerned, as far as our vaccination drive is concerned, it is not going to be hampered in any way by WHO. Say, on the other side, supposingly after a week WHO doesn't give a nod, it doesn't matter in any way. It doesn't mean that this vaccine is not efficacious or it doesn't have any side effects. So I think we should not divulge more into whether the WHO will give us the approval or will not give us. One thing we must appreciate, we must applaud our scientific committee, the kind of scientific endeavor they have taken. They have done an incredible job. And practically they have followed all the phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials in a proper way.
Right.
And this vaccine on ground is working perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So should we just completely discard the WHO and its emergency approvals? And should there be another authority that needs to be built at this point of time? And finally, lastly, I go to Dr. Vivek Gupta, who's on the broadcast and patiently waiting to air his views. Dr. Gupta, what do you make of it all?
Yeah, I have to summarize actually. You see, the COVAXIN is our own vaccine. It is an inactivated virus. It is a killed virus, while others are different techniques, which is, of course, we know the AstraZeneca and other things. Only 5 vaccines as of now has been approved by WHO, as you already told, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Moderna, J&J, and Sinopharma. So we don't have to be, first of all, we are dependent on WHO for 2 reasons. Because first of all, the export, and secondly, of travel. Because let me tell you, my father is a pharmacologist and he was an assistant director in ICMR formerly. When he was choosing between AstraZeneca and COVAXIN, he said, I will take COVAXIN. The reason were 2 things. Because he said it's a killed virus, complete virus. He is a very important, thoroughly read person. So there is no doubt that COVAXIN is a good and very well established vaccine. But of course, there is no doubt that we were late in giving the phase 3 trial, although it was approved in our country before the phase 3 trial, and there was a lot of criticism. But we thought that phase 2, at least the safety is okay, so we can go ahead with this vaccine, and there was an emergency requirement for those vaccines.
Okay.
Coming on to the point, now June is the time when they applied. Now this is September, October, they are going to take it. And they're very hopeful that WHO will give a green signal for emergency use authorization, and we will be able to travel, the export will be allowed. Whether there has been delay or not, that is, of course, there is a competitive environment, there is an industrial pressure on whether WHO is moved by that, whether Chinese pressure is there or not. All these are points of speculation.
Yeah.
But I must say that our phase 3 trial, as Dr. MC Mishra very clearly said, that was delayed and therefore they had approved it. But there have been reasons why Pfizer, Moderna, they were given so quick approval. There is no doubt, there is some sense of partiality. I have lived in France.
Okay.
When I'm working there, we know.
Okay. I only have as much time. I thank you, Dr. Vivek Gupta, and all the other panelists, all the other good doctors that have joined me on the broadcast and shared their analysis and thoughts on this bias that is being witnessed by Bharat Biotech and COVAXIN. I'll take a short break, come right back, because on the other end, we also have the India Idea Summit that is presented to you by the US-India Business Council. So straight cutting from Washington, D.C., live on your screens in a commercial break after this.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.